This is a presentation of SBE 15, New York City.
Well, welcome. My name is Varto, and I'm the owner of Varto Technologies. We are a platinum partner of VizRT and many other, of course, manufacturer. We design, integrate, and build TV studios. And also, of course, we sell equipment. We provide training, we provide consulting, and as well, of course, we're a service center in this facility. So, of course, we're not only specializing with RT, we are as well, as I said earlier, specializing in many other products. We are reseller for Panasonic, Sony, JVC, you name it, all the big names. We're in business for almost 40 years. And welcome to our facility. And I want to introduce Yervan Keshisha, the sales engineer, for him to showcase the Tricaster Elite, Tricaster 2 Elite for you. If any questions later on you guys have, we'll be happy to answer them for you. And after we're done with the meeting, you're welcome to look at the other rooms for of course, this is my about the people present over here to be able to see the equipment in the other spaces which we have. Welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Welcome again. Like Varto mentioned, my name is Yervan. So I'm going to kind of hunker down over here. I've got some equipment set up. So I'm just going to switch the screen over to the Tricaster for you. And I am going to give you the lay of the land of what we're going to talk about and what we're looking at. All right, perfect. Excellent. All right, so VizRT, Tricaster, that's going to be the theme of what we're talking about. Also ingrained within that is NDI and IP. And so today here in our facility, we have, like Varto mentioned, we have a studio, we have a control room, we have racks of equipment all in place. And it's a fully functioning environment, and it's set up as well for demonstration, but it can be used for a full production if we wanted it to be. And so today we're leveraging the Netgear AV network that we have deployed within our facility, and via that we're leveraging NDI. NDI is new tech, now VizRT's IP protocol. It's a standard that they developed, and it leverages standard gigabit networks to transport slightly compressed video across that network. And that's kind of the secret sauce, or one of the big selling points of the Tricaster product line. And we're leveraging that technology as well today for this presentation. And so we're not in our control room right now. We're in our studio space, but we have a couple of displays set up, and I have a couple pieces of equipment set up in front of me. And so just to give you an idea, this display here, this is my multi-viewer. This is the Tricaster's main primary user interface, and specifically the Tricaster 2 Elite. So that's the system that we're leveraging. That is the flagship Tricaster product available right now. It's the top of the food chain, let's call it, within the Tricaster line in terms of rack mount on-premises systems. And I say that because there are also a couple of cloud-based options, self-hosted or manufacturer-hosted options as well for this technology. So today, this Tricaster, it's sitting in a rack in a room not too far away. It's on the other side of our, let's see, right there. No, wrong one. There it is. So there's a couple new tech systems. This is the rack right outside, right on the other side of this wall. There's a couple of pieces of equipment in there. At the bottom of that rack, there's a Netgear AV switch, and we're also leveraging and feeding off of that network in this room as well. So this is the main UI of that Tricaster. This is the main primary output of that Tricaster. So that's our program out. So that's what we're looking at. How are we getting those sources into this space? We're actually leveraging NDI. So the Tricaster creates an IP output of its user interface and all of its monitors, all of its displays, all the inputs that touch its SBI connections, all its internal media is available on the network as an IP source. And so what we're doing, I'm actually decoding that IP back to baseband, in this case HDMI, via a Spark. This is a new tech, now VisRT product. I have I brought some show units here. So these are essentially I/O boxes. They can do encode or decode to this IP flavor. So long story short, that's what we're looking at here. These are decoding off of my network into these monitors. That's what we're looking at on these screens. Okay, next up, and I want this to be interactive. I intentionally do not have a slide deck. I do not want to bore you with slides. We have a lot of cool toys here, so we want to talk about and show that. So if you have questions throughout this, I welcome you. This is not a formal scripted presentation. So I'm going to be going through these different aspects. So if you have any questions, please feel free. So we're monitoring off of IP. We also have control. So in this kit, in this area right here, I have two devices. I've got just a Windows PC. In this case, it's a Surface tablet. On this tablet, I am also looking at, and I will just flip it around, I'm also looking at the interface of the Tricaster. And I actually have full keyboard and mouse control via this PC. Now, this would have been much easier for me if I just brought you all into my control room where all this is wired and set up. But NDI also makes this pretty simple to set up as well. And this guy here, this is the NewTek Flex panel. So this is a control panel. This is a switcher for the Tricaster product line. It supports various of the models in the Tricaster line. And today this is connected again to the Tricaster 2 Elite via IP. So I'm on the network. I'm removed somewhat from my control room, but I've set up a mini control room. So this alone is a demonstration of what NDI gives us in terms of connectivity in a facility. So all of this is just internally. Please, absolutely.
Is it a separate network that's traveling in the office LAN, or is it integrated within the LAN and just separated by subnets?
Excellent question. In my case here, since we have full control, we have two ISPs. One ISP, one internet provider is for the office equipment and all of our normal stuff, printers, so on and so forth. There are ports outside of our main kind of like panels that we have. There are various ports that we have around the office, one of which is on the corporate network, let's call it, and the second would be on the AV network. The corporate network is on, let's just call it whatever the switching brand is doesn't matter. The AV network is on M4250. In my case, at least in this specific deployment, Netgear M4250 AV switches. There's a core switch, and then there are a number of switches placed around. So in this corner on the other side of this wall, I can, of course, pull up the camera and show you, there's a PoE++ capable 40-port switch in the rack. There's also two switches, PoE+, PoE++ supporting various things. And then, again, there's fiber. As you can see, there's LC that drops here. And then on the panel in the back and various places, at least here in our facility, they all go back to the core. In my case here, I'm not deployed for 2110, but I will be planning to transition or build another environment based around KROS with 2110. But this guy here, of course. So here, at this moment, I don't have 2110 deployed, but the AV switches on their M4350 product line. So it's the same product line. It's the same AV managed switches. The 4350 will support 2110. You have the QSFP ports and and so on. The 4250 is 10 gig uplinks with 1 gig copper. That's the 4250. That's what we need for this use case here. But you could easily, you know, mix and match within that product line. That's a really powerful piece of the Netgear stuff.
And also there is a other BizRT product, which is you will receive 2110 and convert it to an NDI. So
There are products, yeah.
available which will allow you to do that.
If you wanna leverage 2110 with the Tricaster environment, you can, you know, you have essentially it's like a transceiver, it's a converter.
Is that to the -22, the slightly compressed version implementation, or the full bandwidth version?
It would probably be, I mean, there's variant products now because NDI has also been, they've licensed it out, right? So a number of manufacturers have baked them into their products. Like Ross just announced that they're baking them in. You're going to start to see them in their routers natively, NDI conversions and whatnot as well. So NDI has trickled into what we consider even our hardware-based manufacturers. And so in turn, I'm sure you're going to see multiple.
Okay.
The specific BizRT product, I would have to double check. I don't know exactly what it's going to do specifically, but we can double check that for you for sure. Okay, cool. So just out of curiosity, has at least anyone in the room, has anyone worked with Tricaster specifically? Jeff has, you have? Okay, great. Just to have an understanding. All right, perfect. So back to our network, we've got IP set up. We're monitoring the Tricaster. So we understand kind of the workflow, how we're getting these sources here, how I'm going to be able to drive this demo from here. So now let's dive in. Let's look at the Tricaster interface. Let's talk about the Tricaster specifically, and kind of what makes it different from, say, a standard switcher, because it's not a standard switcher. The Tricaster, it's a full production, system in a box. It can do our, switching. It can do our video playback. It can do graphics overlays. It can do recording. It can do streaming. So the system itself has a lot of functionalities. You can have a single operator drive a lot of this, but you don't necessarily have to. As demonstrated by just this little workflow, this doesn't necessarily have to take away from what's happening on the main control room. I could have this board, I can just delegate this specifically to a mix effect and control something completely separate. So just because the Tricaster has all this stuff jam-packed into it does not necessarily mean that you have to do all that at the same time. You can bring in alpha channel sources from your Chiron. You can bring them from your Expression, from your Trio, from whatever your graphics software is, in the product line, let's say, or in the scale of graphic softwares. Most of them now support NDI, but if it's not, the Tricaster could take in the key and fill via SDI. So you can break out what the system is doing. So let's take advantage of some of this functionality. Let's take advantage of some of this, some of these features that are kind of at a single point of control for an operator. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to move around my interface here a little bit, and I'll give you an idea of what we're looking at. So I'm going to just crunch down my multi-viewer here a bit, and let's see, let's put something else in preview. Okay, excellent, perfect. So looking at the UI, this machine in particular, this is the like I mentioned, this is the Tricaster 2 Elite. So real quick, I want to show you the UI. I'm sorry, the box itself, the unit itself. I tried to download these pictures, but it was a funky web-based format, and I didn't have time to convert them. So we're gonna do it live. So this is the TC2 Elite. It's a 3RU turnkey system. That's the front of the unit. Obviously, you'll be able to take a look at it in the other room here in a few. But this is the back. And just to get an idea of like what we're talking about with this Tricaster. So a couple key things that we have on the unit. We've got, of course, computer connections, keyboard, mouse. We've got redundant power supplies. We have Ethernet. So we have 1 gig and 10 gig copper Ethernet connections, various USB, USB-C connections for, again, you need to add a hard drive, back up some content, bring in some media. You have kind of your computer I/O. Displays. So we have multiple display outs. We're looking at the main user interface here. I kind of just took it over and hijacked it here with this web browser. But you have your main UI, which runs off of one of these display outs, but then you also have your multi-view outputs. So the TC208 can drive 4 configurable displays out of the machine itself. Here we're only looking at one, but on the other side you'll see there's various displays that are set up for the other Tricasters that are in the workflow. So those displays can be multi-view. We all know what a multi-view is, but it's driven from the Tricaster's display output. There's a number of advantages to that in our case here. Baseband sources. We have 8 3G SDI connectors on the system, 8 3G SDI outputs on the system. This unit is a 32 input switcher. How do we get to 32 inputs? We leverage IP. We leverage NDI in like what we're doing here. You'll see we have a number of cameras that are all leveraging IP and NDI. That's how we could drive those source count up to 32, let's say. Computer displays, you have Zoom running on a machine. Those could all be NDI coming in over your network. That's how we populate the 32. So 32 inputs, those could be SRT as well. Those could be a variety of other IP formats that Tricaster supports natively. And then again, outputs, you have 8 configurable outputs. So 8 mixed outputs on the TC2 Elite. So that's huge. You have your program clean. You can have MEs driving these different outputs, and they can be doing, a variety of things. So that's kind of the back of the unit. You've got some analog audio in and out, but the Tricaster also supports Dante as well for audio, if you want to bring in audio via Dante, and a number of other, USB to audio interfaces as well, outside of its analog sources right here. Any questions just on the unit or the hardware itself before I go back to the UI?
Could the audio be immersive like MPEG-H or Atmos?
No, this one would not. No, not in this machine.
Discrete channels.
Yeah, so the TC2 would support up to 8 discrete channels. And those could also be via SDI as well, embedded over the SDI or NDI also. Please.
I'm assuming the machine basically a Linux file.
This is Windows based. Yeah, the Tricaster platform is a Windows 10 based. It's running on a long-term service branch of Windows 10. So NewTek has some control, or VizRT has some control over that unit, and what's installing, what's not installing, so on and so forth. But it is a Windows based file.
How do you avoid it from doing an update that ruins everything?
Everything, I would say, with these systems, it's not going to install an update on you. All right, it's not going to force that update. It's not going to install it. It might download it, but there's ways to have that disabled in Windows. So, they get by default applied as a metered connection, so it doesn't on its own download. It asks you to download it. So you can, if you want to go into Windows and force it to be even more particular about when it even downloads that stuff, you can. But it will not install it on you. It'll never install it unless you initiate that installation.
What do you recommend on locking it down for security?
It's a good question. So, obviously it is a PC. It is a Windows machine. There are certainly considerations that are associated with that. I would say in terms of locking it down, we don't recommend NewTek or VizRT does not recommend any virus protection running on the system, any real-time virus protection, because It's eating up cycles, CPU cycles, potentially GPU cycles, right? It's wedged itself in there. So the way you protect it is by segmenting it. That's the best way to protect it. You segment the network. Like in our case, I have a discrete AV network. It doesn't touch our corporate network. And nowhere in here is it touching the corporate network. That's the best way to protect it. Do the Windows updates. Keep the unit updated. That's another recommendation that I just in general. The software, the Tricaster software, is designed to support Windows updates that it's running on, the Windows box that it's running on. So do the updates. Keep the Tricaster up to date if you want to as well. There are at certain points, if there's a major feature update of Windows, you want to make sure the Tricaster software is updated as well. But incremental updates, you're welcome to do on the system. I encourage them on a quarterly basis to go hunting for them, and we do that for customers as well.
Since it's a Windows box, do you recommend like running mirrored machines or?
For
having one box mirroring another so it can't go down, right?
It's not going to necessarily function, I think, the way that you'd want it to. There's ways to back up the drives, to take, clone the system drive. There's a tool baked into the Tricaster that lets you do that. So you can create backup, but as a live backup, you can leverage NDI and other things, but nothing's going to mirror the actions of that system unless it's you're scripted to do so, which you can, and people have done in the past. That goes to the macro system, the engine that's in the Tricaster. It's you can manipulate, you can design the system to do any number of things.
The switcher also is capable of linking up with Zoom. Now, everybody knows that video quality, audio quality goes all over the place with Zoom. Does this have any corrective devices that you could make corrections, in other words, raise or lower on the fly?
Sure. So there's a couple things. I mean, garbage in, garbage out, remains true. Certainly, right? But what we could do is like there's proc amps on the inputs. You can do color correction on the Tricaster without any external devices. So that's something that I find myself if I'm doing something for Zoom. Right now I can go into this source, click on my image drop down, and I have some auto functionality, which you can hope and pray it autos the right way, or you can go to proc amp and you can do just granular manipulation, brightness, contrast, saturation, so on and so forth, at least on the source itself. So that comes in handy. I find that very useful. Another function that I find useful, again, this is not using the Tricaster's internal Zoom tool. There is a tool called Live Call Connect, and I'll kind of talk about that. But forget about the internal tool. Let's just assume that's a source coming in from like a screen grab that we're doing one way or another, right? So the proc amp was one way that I mentioned. You can obviously crop, but there's a tool in here that I find particularly useful. Let me open up another source here. Let me actually use this one, and you'll actually see me explore my NDI network here. So I'm calling up my network, and I'm looking for the different sources that exist. So I'm going to find one of these PCs that are on the network. I can see, Intel graphics card. So it's just the graphics card of the machine. So, okay, so that's my machine. So let's pull a different one. Otherwise, we'll be in the matrix here. Okay, that's better. All right. So what I'd like to show you is here's another laptop, which also has the same screen on it. So let me clear that away real quick, and I'll show you that. But this is a source coming in. We'll pretend it's Zoom. So what's neat about the Tricaster, it actually has this function when you have an NDI source or an SDI source coming in. It's called pan and scan. So on the input level, without having to leverage an ME, you can actually punch into a source position. So you don't have to do any region of interest kind of cropping or use another scan converter or some device that you have to manipulate this with. You can actually do this right in the system. In a Zoom world, I've found this incredibly valuable. Zoom, Hangouts, whatever you're using. So on the input by input, again, this is a 32 input switcher. So assume you have some Zoom farm set up with 10 laptops all feeding into the Tricaster. You can do manipulation, punch in. Also, this works for a 4K source. I did an event the other day. I had a high wide camera set up and I used one of these guys. Now I had an HD project, but the Tricaster 2 Elite supports Ultra HD. And now the inputs were all 3G SDI. How do we get 4K into it? It's got to hit NDI at some point. These are the individual NDI boxes, but there are rack mount devices as well that do that I/O
So the
conversion.
entire system runs on NDI and everything's converted to it or from it.
Correct. But it has its baseband connectors on there, but the system internally is processing everything NDI. Yep, absolutely. But the baseband is there. You can not even think about NDI if you want. You use SDI, pop in your 4 or 5 cameras, take your SDI out of it, you're good to go.
Is there any loss between going from NDI to SDI or?
It's visually lossless. Visually lossless. So it's roughly, if you're 1080i, it's like about 100 megabits per second, 2997. Progressive, maybe 120, 125 megabits per second. 1080p, 5994, maybe 160. When you hit 4K, now you're 200, 250 megabits per second. So when you're like here, when I have these different switches, what's the uplink, 10 gig, 20 gig, or more in terms of aggregate? You have to know what resolution we're doing, just like anything, so you plan your network accordingly. NDI's success is entirely based upon the infrastructure. And that can go for any protocol. I mean, if I put a bunch of switches plugged into switches, varying brand switches, a Cisco plugged into an Arista, plugged into a Netgear, plugged into a Ubiquity, and you try to get NDI from one side to the other, good luck. You're not. It's so in some cases, I've heard personally somebody will say, "Oh, well, NDI, I'd rather use SDI." I had a difficulty with it. Well, I said, okay, what was your scenario? Oh, we plugged it in on one side of my building to the other, not knowing what's on this side and what's on that side. So if you have control over the infrastructure, and even if you don't have control, if you have visibility or understanding of the infrastructure, and if it is a facility, you have a partner in your IT department, you can make this stuff sing. These Netgear switches, I kind of led with that because it certainly helps make this stuff easier. Because there's protocols baked in for NDI and Dante coexisting on the same network. That's very advantageous. Netgear filled the gap in this part of the industry, at least. You have Aristas, you have your certain product lines that you have that support our industry as well on the higher end. But Netgear now kind of filled the gap, and now they've got and rightfully so. It's a good product. So it's not a gimmicky thing. It's actually they partnered with the manufacturers and built some hardware and software that really does work and make our lives easier as, let's say, broadcast engineers, or we're not necessarily all IT folk, right? So this gives us a little more ability to deploy this stuff a little quicker, at least. So anyway, so at least talking about Zoom, we have some of those functions, but let's just kind of step through the Tricaster interface just to do it justice. I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what the layout is, and then we can do Q&A. So looking at the UI, right now I've got this multi-viewer configured to show just these sources, but I could configure this multi-viewer to show anything that I wanted to show. I could put input, 13 right here if I want, or I could put my media player back in here. So these screens are fully configurable. Let's populate our inputs. So input one, let's see, what is this? This is a bird dog camera via NDI coming into the TriCaster. I actually can control this camera right from the
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person.
I can also control that via the Flex control panel. So this particular control surface actually has, it's a little bit of a smaller joystick, but it has a joystick. It's got a zoom rocker as well. So I can manipulate, and I can, of course, I can put this on here. I can manipulate this camera, this source live, all via NDI, which is pretty neat. So that's another big kind of sell of NDI. It's these PTZ cameras, these robotic cameras that have it baked in that allow us to, again, control the source as well as get the video in real time, almost no latency. You're talking like 8 scan lines of latency in a hardware implementation of NDI. So it's less than a frame latency. It's probably not that different from, a camera spitting out SDI and the amount of time it took to process that signal down to that connector, so.
Is anybody using NDI in a security camera environment?
Some of those manufacturers have, licensed NDI, I'm sure, but I would say more like there are cameras that are worthy of being security cameras that can output NDI. As in, there's a low end to the NDI market in terms of the camera market as well. Yeah, and so you can get some budget, $800-900 cameras that look like security cameans. And that may be fine for certain scenarios. But then there's
a few extra side shots or cutaways.
Yeah, I mean, we've rigged up a GoPro before. Why not make it? GoPros look pretty decent, some of them at least. But why not make it PTZ? And if it's NDI, it does make it a little bit more straightforward to deploy that.
Does the flex panel there, as you're changing things, does the labels on the buttons change along with it?
Yeah.
Or else you're just.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So I'll lift it up a little bit here, and I'll switch the bank so you can maybe see if I can find the button. Bank. So right now this is a 32 input switcher, right? It's got many MEs, many DDRs, but the front stripe is only delegated right now. This first bank 1 through 8, DDRs 1 through 4, MEs 1 through 4. I can look at bank 2. And now I can see inputs 9 through 16, and then I see the remaining mix effect buses over here. So this will allow me to, and then again, there's other qualifier keys on here that will call for other, I can change the stripe, I can do any number of things. So this is the Flex. This is like a single stripe version of the Flex. VizRT recently released, and we're waiting to get our hands on ours. They recently released the Flex Duo, which is a larger version of this IP-based, NDI-based control surface. That, I mean, it blowed me away. I mean, in terms of the functionality, in terms of some of what we expect in terms of like a broadcast switcher, in terms of like reassigning certain stripes that you had some limitations on with some of the older control surfaces. Locking individual buttons, remapping certain buttons to be macros without a qualifier key. So there's a number of kind of functions that they added into these boards, into the Flex Duo board. It's very powerful. Okay, so just to kind of show you a couple more things on the interface. So we've got a couple of our PTZ cameras that are populated in the system. We can, of course, have SDI sources populated. I've got in here even a live view output. So I have a live view server in the rack as well. That's feeding out essentially SDI to an IO module and coming into the TriCaster. So we have a live view in play here as well. So those are our sources that we're working with. Let's look at the media that I have associated with this particular project. So if we look down here, this TriCaster actually has 4 DDRs. These are video playback decks. These are internal media players. They have video and audio associated with them. And so in my case right now, I have the audio muted, but I'll go ahead and I will just dissolve over to this clip. I have it set to automatically play. And so here's this playlist. It's full form video that's playing out. So it's not just a buffer. I can play full form video, however much hard drive space you have. This case is a 4 terabyte solid state rated drive that's baked into the TriCaster 2 Elite. So you've got plenty of storage on here. So as much storage as you have, that's as long as the content is that you can play back. So no limitations, no frame count on this stuff. And so I'm just going to advance through a couple clips that I have. There's even transitions baked into this particular playlist. So I can just advance through and you'll see it's doing a wipe through these different segments right now. This is more of like B-roll back. This is the talk over. So if I was doing more of a canned presentation, I may use, some of these as well. These are some of the different TriCasters that are available, the cloud-based TriCaster. But you can see these are clips in our media player. Let's play back like an individual clip. So let's say this TriCaster clip. Okay, this is DDR2. I have it queued. I've got it set to autoplay. I'm going to turn loop off, make sure it just plays this one clip, and I'm going to preview DDR2. And I'll say, okay, we'll do a wipe to it. I'll wipe to this. It's playing the clip back. And then in this case, you can see I have a timer. It shows me my time remaining. So 28, 27. If I can see that in my DDR as well over here. Maybe I had a multi-viewer where, I didn't need to see the video in the multi-viewer. I just wanted to see time code. Cool. Sure. You got it. TriCaster's multi-viewer, it's flexible. So you can manipulate it that way. So, no hands in this case. How much time is left? 5 seconds left. We'll let it transition back automatically. 3, 2, 1. It automatically does a wipe back, queues up the next clip for us. If we wanted to. Right? If we don't want it to, we want to trigger play, by all means. Some cases I would much rather do that. Just depends on the show, the type of production. So that was a full form, full screen clip playback that we just did. Let's go to live source real quick.
What's the clip capacity in terms of events?
It's just a hard drive. So it's 4 terabytes solid state storage that's in there. So if you bring in MP4s, you can put a whole lot of stuff in there. You bring in ProRes 444, that it transcodes to its native codec automatically for you, but that's going to eat up more hard drive space. So you can play hours of content with no issue.
And if you have a network shared hard drive, which is TriCaster or Resort has dedicated network shared hard drive, that is a unlimited amount of space. You can play infinitely if you want to.
Yep. So this will support, in this case, what Varto is referring to in our facility here, we have a Studio Network Solutions Evo storage array. They partnered with VizRT and they have a co-branded product called the NewTek Remote Storage, or NRS. So it's a co-branded. They have an NDI plugin baked into the co-branded one, the one that has the VizRT logo on it. But otherwise, it's a Studio Network Solutions Evo system, which you may be familiar with. So highly scalable, and you can write directly to it. You can play back off of it. So one of the nice functions, since it was brought up, of a storage array, you could actually be writing that file from the TriCaster directly to that storage array while you have, let's say, an editor on Premiere actively editing that growing file. So that's supported within this sort of a workflow as well, which is really neat, without the need for an external recording device that's then writing that file. So you can leverage the tools available within the TriCaster to do just that. So let's look at some other way to use a DDR. So I just took some of these lower thirds that I have. I used these on the production recently, so the names are just whoever they were for this show, but it's a good example of a animated graphic. So these are created in After Effects, Premiere, whatever. It's alpha channel. It's a video with alpha channel. So let's play it on, it plays on, it animates on, it does its thing, and then eventually it'll wipe off. This is flat. This is just a piece of video with an alpha channel on it. The Tricaster is just playing it back and overlaying it. So if I have a graphics team, they're pre-canning content. There is no Chiron, there is no expression, there is no live CG. All good. Play them right out of the Tricaster. The Tricaster operator can manage them. They can relabel these. You can, we can manipulate all these. We can reorder these. We can number them. You can do whatever you want, and you can play them out of the Tricaster. That's one way to do it.
Can you capture a scroll?
So when you say capture a scroll, like
A feed of a scroll.
so you could record anything into the system, and then you could play it back out of the DDR. The only consideration would be if there was alpha channel baked in, but if not, you could certainly manipulate and crop and position something. So the Tricaster does have a native recording engine built into it. So I could do it right now. I can hit record. I know it's a brand new session made for today. So I know it's recording to the main system drive, to the D drive. So not the main system drive, I'm sorry, the main media drive, not the system, not the OS drive. We definitely don't want to record there. So this file that I recorded,
You just brought up a question. With the Tricaster, you have your source drives, your output drives, and you keep your OS drive separate, correct?
Yeah, so there's a internal M2 drive, which is the OS. Windows, small, like 100 gig drive, something like that. Don't put anything on it. Like, don't use the desktop. Don't drag and drop your media on there. You've got a 4 terabyte fast solid state striped media drive. That's your scratch drive. Dump all your content onto there, move it from your hard drive into there, and that's where it can live. OS you keep. So if somebody purchases a system from Varto Technologies, these are the kinds of pieces of training that they will also get. You're not. It's also a process when somebody will work with us. There's things that you'll hear when you first buy the system. If they choose to get trained, which most do, they will get a lot of this kind of maintenance steps, what to do, how to keep the system happy so it keeps you happy, sort of things. We go through a lot of the do's and don'ts. So we go through all that, and then as you have a Tricaster over a period of time, there's updates, there's things that come about. There's no just automatic double click and let it update. No, it's a system built for broadcast. To do an update, there are a couple steps to do it the right way, and so that's where we come into play to kind of support that process. And then if as an operator or as an engineer, you've done that enough times, you've got it. That's it. You know how to do it on your own. You don't necessarily need us to do it for you. So in terms of the drives, there's separate drives. They're segmented. They have their different purposes. The storage arrays that you add on to it, network-based, that's up to you. But we suggest in the facility, eventually you're going to want a network-based storage, whether it's something like an Evo or an NRS where you can record to it, play back off of it, or as just a drive to dump content to and pull content off of, but not necessarily play the media off of it. Because in a facility like this, in a Tricaster, all this media has got to land here. So you're going to use removable media until you get frustrated with it, and then you put something on the network. So this was one option.
Want to stop the recording here?
So actually, yeah. So let's just take a look at that clip. Let's just cut around a couple times. Okay, let's hit stop. So let's find it. So I had my full form media. Let's use DDR2. Let's go and just hit add. And let's find this clip. Recent, good place to start, maybe. Or how about the named session for today? Okay, this was mix 1. All right, so there's this recording. It hasn't created a thumbnail yet, but let's take a look. This is DDR2. Let's put it on air. There's our Zoom guest. Let's just scrub whatever it was there. So here's that recording we just did. If there was audio playing back, it would be associated with this recording as well. I'm obviously just scrubbing it, but easy way. So when I've done sports, I could bank in my open, bank in the open, play it right out of the Tricaster. You don't need your EVS or your 3-play necessarily. If you want to, do it by all means, but you have an internal deck. It could be your primary record, it could be your backup record, or it could just support this kind of stuff if you wanted to. Just because the one thing I always tell people when I'm training is just because it can do all of these things doesn't necessarily mean you have to use all of those tools, but you find that they come in handy. You're out in the field, something comes about, it's got a lot of functions in there that you can leverage. Like this. This is a key one of them.
You mentioned stripe drives. Is that a RAID array?
It's got an internal RAID. Yeah.
That's what that means.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. It's RAID 0. So they're the internal drives. There's no redundant drive. It's meant for just speed.
Yeah.
If you want redundancy, you do external storage, like network-based storage. Yeah.
We're keeping an eye on the clock. We're gonna go several more minutes, but I just want to make sure you're on topic, that you're showing us everything you'd like to show us before I yell out that I would like to see alien hand.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Maybe some falling sheep. We're lucky. So yeah.
Since it's dealing with audio as well as the video part of the content, there's metering, I'm assuming.
Yes, of course.
And is there a loudness meter as well?
There is not a loudness meter per se. There are a number of meters for your individual sources. So we'll hear this because I unmuted it. I think we will. I guess there's no audio on that one. Maybe this guy. Or how about these guys? That has audio on it for sure. So here's a clip playing. It's decoding from IP back to the HDMI that's on the monitor. That's where we're hearing it from. So this here, you can see this is that clip playback. I had it dumbed down a little bit. Master, there's auxiliary outs. These can be assigned to Dante as well. So you can have sources in and out via Dante, as well as the analog sources. And these will embed as well for you on the SDIs. So just a couple of things just to kind of just show you the rest of the interface. We have, again, you have your DDRs, you have your media players. We also have, I just showed you the audio mixer. So you saw that where all of our audio can come in and out of. That lives kind of tucked away in our interface. You can call it up as necessary. But then you also have your mix effect buses. So this is an 8ME switcher. So we can actually configure those MEs right here on the UI. So I'll pull up ME1 and I'll open up its configuration. So in this case, I have two sources on this particular ME. Let's send that to air. That has an animated background. And it has two live video sources feeding it. That animated background, you can see that's a buffer. So these are frame buffers for, it's like 500 frames, about 10 to 15 seconds maximum, looping content that we have coming in. So I have two of those set up over here. That's what we see. That's ME1. Here's ME2. It's like a big little kind of setup over here. So I have two MEs. I can punch in these MEs if I want. I can assign a switcher to any of these stripes and manipulate these. And again, you can configure these however you like. In this case, there's a mortise, but you could also completely, configure a mix effect to your liking. You can set up how many channels it has. We could do any number of configuration. I'll just show you really quickly.
We'll put it on the program up here.
I certainly will. That's a good idea. That'll help, won't it? I missed, didn't I? So here's ME3. We can scale our sources down. We can position them. So within the Tricaster, you have this full ability to build this stuff out. You have a full virtual set engine as well in the Tricaster. So through these mix effect buses, we can also do, kind of
Can you throw up a virtual set?
Yeah.
One loaded in there?
Of course. So let's call up one of the new tech or Viz virtual sets. So let's find one. Let's pick Metropolis. So here's a center. There's various angles as you can see over here. So let's take the center angle. And let me put let's get a clip of one of our dummy clips here. Somebody on green just talking. We'll take this guy. Let's mute his audio, clip level audio. There we go. So that's DDR2. Let's put DDR2 here. And what we can actually do is chroma key. So we didn't talk about chroma keying. We also have full chroma keying baked into the Tricaster. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to key him out. I'm not looking too closely at this key just yet. We'll key him out. There we have him positioned. Let's put this on air as well. So now let's crunch this down. So we're going to take the A layer. He's the A layer. Let's get him to fit in the space a little bit better. Now, the way this works in the Tricaster, he's a little big, huh? The way this works in the Tricaster is it's going to take this flat source. So if we remind ourselves, this guy, this is the camera shot. We keyed the green out, and what we're going to do is find it. There it is. Sorry to advance the clip because I was advancing clips before. Let's come back to our guy over here and set him to loop so he doesn't do that again. There we go. So we've got essentially in this case, it's a flat source, right? The camera's not moving, but what we can do is there's various video sources that are around as well. I'm going to just put some cameras in these screens. Maybe not that one. Let's put this one there. So now I have just various live sources feeding these screens as well. But what's neat is in the Tricasters, you actually can do this virtual zoom. So I'm using the mouse to do it. So that's why it's not particularly smooth because I'm doing it through the UI here. But this is essentially scanning and panning within the interface in this virtual environment. I can move left, I can move right, because essentially it's just zoomed into this virtual space. Now the camera does not move in this case. We're not taking tracking data in, but maybe we don't care. We don't want that. Maybe we just need to elevate a certain look, a certain space, a certain shot, a certain production that we're doing. So in this case, we put an elegant virtual set around them, but it could also be something a little more simple if we wanted it to be. So this is a single angle. So the way we would do a multi-angle virtual set in the Tricaster, I could call up another mix effect, load in the left angle shot or the right angle shot, put the associated camera angle with that shot into that mix effect. Now I can cut a virtual show.
And one thing I would like to add is Varto was zooming in, zooming out, panning right and left with the mouse. In there, we have the option on the comp, which you can create a preset per shot. Of course, you do this ahead of time or while you're doing your live show. So you can create a multiple preset, which it will beautifully zoom in, zoom out, pan right and left to whatever the shot you prepare, the preset ahead of time. There it is. So you don't want to do that with the mouse, but if you put it on the preset, look at how smooth and how beautiful movement you can get.
So a lot of this, so virtual sets, we have virtual sets baked in. We can take live sources into them. We can manipulate them. We can move around in those spaces. We can do multi-angle virtual sets through this engine. So that's all, that's all awesome. We have 8 Emmys in this TC2, the TC1, and the other systems that are essentially positioned below this system have 4 Emmys. So again, you can do a multi-angle virtual set.
And even on a topic, because we're gonna grant here.
Yeah.
All right, so I know there's a lot of different levels of the Tricaster from junior high school level to super pro level. So the question that everybody here gets asked is how much? How much and what are the sizes? And very briefly, don't go into too much detail because I know it goes from very low to very high.
Absolutely. So the Tricaster product line, it's like you said, it's a very wide product line now. There's systems that start from the Tricaster Mini, which is the Mini Go, which is what you'll see over here. This starts at around $5,000. No control surface, just the unit, keyboard, and mouse. And essentially goes up from there for the main unit. Again, Mini, there's 3 levels. There's 3 different Tricaster Mini solutions. Mini Go, Mini X, Mini 4K. We have our Tricasters, the rack mountable Tricasters that start at 10,000 for the unit itself, 10.5, something like that. And then they again, it'll go up to about 15.5, 22, and then the TC2 we have, it's around 32 for the unit itself. And then you need a control surface. So this Flex is 9,500, 94.95. And then the Flex, there's the 2-stripe and the Flex Duo, they go up to about 17, 18,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that, in that neighborhood.
We had the full machine there, the giant board.
Where was that? I'm sorry.
Queens Public Television.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, our customers use those.
Yep. So they have 2 stripes in their facilities. Yeah. So
All
we
right.
have one of those on the other side over there. So
All right, we're gonna cram in. The topic will now be cool stuff.
awesome. Alien
Throw some
hands.
cool stuff at us quickly, if you don't mind.
Only the alien hands. Only the alien hands for you.
You're giving away, you're
I wanna
one of the
know-
oldies, you know?
Well, I want to know, somebody's got to tell me what the use for this is besides looking pretty cool.
They're the only use for this is for the trade show demos that we use them for. Here's the alien hand. So the big thing with the alien hand, let's do it one more time. Let me do it with a live source that I can
That
manipulate.
would be so handy during budget time.
So the alien hand, the cool thing about the alien hand is, I'll pause it, is that it's warping live video. I have the same source. I have the same source in preview just so I can control it. But it's warping live video. So you could actually use this engine and build your own transitions that manipulate and warp the live video. It's really neat.
Put a lot of work in for something that will only be seen at trade shows.
Yep. Oh yeah. And then of course, for our video toaster fans out there, we have the falling sheep, which was very popular in its time. And this was actually by our friend Kane Peterson at Newtek, one of the main sales engineers over there. He actually took that off of a VHS tape, like a video toaster demo reel, and recaptured it and recreated the key frame by frame, because I guess he had time.
Okay,
But
a couple of minutes, anything else, or?
I would just say, you know, the biggest thing today I really wanted to drive home was IP, NDI, being able to be removed from the environment, being able to kind of set up anywhere in your facility. And then kind of along with that, there are also the Tricaster Now and Tricaster Vector cloud options that are available for within this product line. So if you wanted to leverage that, host it yourself, or use a VizRT hosted solution, there's a lot of opportunities that come about from that as well.
We're going to have all the information to get in touch with Varto Technology at SBE15.com. I'm going to edit this at some point and have it posted. So if you need to get in touch with these fine folks here, the information will be available on our website. I'm going to open it as the sheep fall for any questions, especially the folks on Zoom who've been kind of quiet. Zoomers? Anybody?
Or they can email us, of course, with their questions to sales@vartotechnologies.com, and we'll be happy to answer all the questions you have.
So feel free to take a look at the facility. There's, we have a control room. We have the full setup.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You miss out there.
You'll have to swing by.
Yeah, so have to come by. We really appreciate it, Varto. Showing us this stuff, and we know now where to go to get our Tricaster equipment.
Next to AC Moore Paint Company.
There you go.
Stop by anytime, they'll feed you.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Welcome.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thanks for joining us. please remember to subscribe to SBE 15 New York City.